Welcome back to another episode of the Decision Hour. I'm your host, Adam Bird. Folks, I got another great interview lined up for you today. He is a Christian trauma surgeon, high-level leader, motivational speaker, and a co-host of a radio show. And he's an author of a book called Saved, One Trauma Surgeon's True Accounts of Miracles in His Life. I'm really excited about this guest today, folks, so get ready. Help me welcome Dr. Craig Thayer. Craig, how are you, sir?
I'm great, sir. Honored to be here.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
So I was made in Michigan and birthed in California. My natural mother was Catholic and was engaged to my natural father, and he wasn't progressing through catechism fast enough, so she called that off and ran to California 6 months into pregnancy, and then had me in Monterey, California. Held me for 10 days, and the courage she must have had to give me up. There weren't foster homes back then, so I was an orphan. I got adopted after 9 months by an Irish Catholic mom, came over when she was 21 from Ireland, and my dad, and they raised me. They were my mom and dad. And that's just the beginning of the miracles of my life. I mean, I could have been not here.
Yeah.
And I grew up on Providence Court. So coincidences, luck, those things, I always go, I mean, Einstein would say coincidence is just God trying to remain anonymous.
I love that.
But yeah. So, and then just it's pain to purpose for things in my life. So I'm 11 and I'm behind my dad going through the front door of the house. And my sister's behind me, and my mom's laying there with her back to us on the floor. Turns out she's drunk. It's the first time we find out she's an alcoholic. She goes to AA and licks it. And then I went to AA meetings with her. I think that was the beginning of me being created an empath, so I could understand other people's testimonies. And then just before the end of my junior year, I get a twisted intestine. I go into surgery. They untwist it. I don't finish my junior year, so I didn't get my yearbook handed out to all my friends to sign. Someone else did it for me, luckily. And then I head off to college, and my mom dies my freshman year from a heart attack. My all-male dorm floor says, you won't finish. And I knew I wanted to go into medicine because before this, in junior year in high school, I was helping tutor 2 blind students in geometry. Well, they have to see the circles and the squares, so I had to think outside of my brain and then trace it for them. I learned how they learned. So I knew I liked to help people. And then I took an anatomy physiology class, and I go, the human body's incredible. I like working with my hands. So surgery. And I thought, hey, I want to be the cardiovascular chest cutter. And I ruled that out in med school when I did an acting internship. But and then my sophomore year, first quarter, I'm coming back from a bacteriology class and come around a corner on my bicycle, and some girl pulls out in front of me. I was on the wrong side. It's my bad. And I jackknifed my front wheel, go straight to the pavement, get up, make sure she's okay, didn't touch her. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting there on the curb with an ambulance in front of me. And I'm like, I knocked myself out. And when I'm in the ambulance, they asked me my phone number. I can't remember it. And I had cut my ear. So they took me to the health center, stitched it up, let me go. I studied for my midterm that night, which is the next day. And I have this fluid coming out of my ear, and I can't hear that well. And I call the health center, and it was some grad student who has no medical knowledge at all. And he's like, well, I don't know if that's normal. Let's make you an appointment for tomorrow. So I came in the next day after the midterm for bacteriology.
Oh my gosh.
And they x-rayed my head, and I got air in my skull. So I have a basilar skull fracture. And they admit me because I can get meningitis with the, ear canal directly to the brain. Oh. So I'm in there for 2 weeks, and UC Davis is a quarter system. So that's 20% of your curriculum. Right. And I'm taking organic chem, physics, biochemistry, bacteriology, stats. I think it was 18 units. So like the most I took when it's like, God, what are you doing, man? You're putting me through a trial.
Right.
And again, this, my friends are like, he'll never make it. He just won't complete. Because if you get out of series, 128A, 128B, 128C for organic chemistry, then you're going to be a year off. So I wanted to get done in 4 years. I got it done. And then junior year, my dad is diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. One morning he wakes up, he can't get out of bed. It's metastasized to his spine. So I have to pick him up and physically carry him to the hospital. I can't imagine the nurse's face of a 20-year-old boy carrying his father, who's thin from chemo and radiation, in his arms. And he was there for a month, and then he passed away. And again, people were saying, no, he won't finish. But I came back for my senior year and finished. And then another kind of funny story is just getting into med school. So, I had probably 20 schools I applied to. And if you get a thin envelope, that means you're rejected. I could wallpaper a wall with all of them. And then I got one that was thin from UC Davis, and I opened it. Congratulations, you have not been accepted. I'm like, what is this? I was on a wait list. So the funny part of the wait list was summertime. It's getting close to when school would start. I get this call, and I thought it was going to be my roommate for me to come pick him up from his summer class. So I answered Craig's taxi service. And this lady says, oh, this is so-and-so from UC Davis Med School. Is Craig Thayer there? And I'm like, oh, yeah, let me go get him. Don't change my voice. Just cover the phone. And then I come back. Hello. And I got in. So that was a miracle.
You've gone through so much, Doc, and I want to back up here a minute. There's some things I want to kind of dive into a little bit more. You mentioned something about pain to purpose. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what do you really mean by, like, from pain to purpose? What do you mean by that?
I think God puts us through trials, and it's scripturally written you should take joy in those, which is hard when they're painful. But there's a purpose to that. So my mom passing away taught me how important my dad was. When my dad passed away, I realized I'm not immortal either. But it gave me, and I would always say this because I was raised Catholic, confirmed, but just never followed, was a believer, but just didn't follow.
Right.
Until later on in life. And it's just, these things will be used. I mean, the fact that my grandmother, who was the only one there for all of my adulthood, so she was there for high school, graduation, undergrad, med school, and my 6-year residency program, and then passed away again. So pain to purpose. She passed away 2 years ago, August 7th of 2021. So not quite 2 years, but and she always wanted me to write this book. She says, you need to write this so people can be motivated and inspired and know. And really, I couldn't have written it all the way until her passing because of 2 miracles she left behind. And then a friend of mine named Ralph, who's at the very end of the book, he brings hope. So, and if you never read the whole book, read that chapter. So it will, in this world right now where we're so divided, bring you peace of mind and tranquility, and that there's hope. But anyway, yeah, so she just said, you need to do this. And she got to read the rough drafts that were pretty rough and things she didn't know about life and stuff. So I did it for her, but I also did it for myself because I knew I'm feeling a second calling. I was given hands and healing and empathy and teaching as gifts. These same gifts, God will put you in a trial like he's done. So moving to Georgia wasn't really smooth. Maybe a second book. But he does that to prune me, to shape me, to guide me, to make me ready for the next use of my hands, my healing, my empathy, and my teaching.
It's kind of funny how God does that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you sit there and you pray and you ask for something. And those that have listened to this show long enough, over the years that I've been on, I've shared this maybe less than a handful of times, but there was a period in my life where I remember I'd ask for something, I'd get it, like thinking that that's what I wanted, and I got it, and then realized this isn't what I want. Take this away. And I call it the gut feeling. At least for me, I learned later on in life that gut feeling that you have, that was God talking to me. And when I look back on my life, and I can remember some very specific times where I didn't listen to my gut, or I didn't listen to God telling me to do something, but I did it anyway because I'm young and dumb, and that's what I'm going to do because I know everything.
Right.
And then you don't get the results that you think you're going to get, and you realize you're not as smart as you think you are. And then you're like, oh, what's this gut thing? Why do I feel like this is God telling me to do something? Since I started listening to my gut, I've never been steered wrong. And I'm comfortable saying that because of the relationship, my personal relationship with God, and whatnot. So I think it's very profound what you're saying, and how you've come through everything that you've come through. And which brings me to my next question: with everything that you've gone through in life, and the things that you've had to overcome, was there ever a time in your journey where you wanted to just give up?
No, and I think God blinded me from a lot of reality. So one of those was just interviewing for med school. I went to Georgetown to interview. It's the most expensive school in the United States for med school. And there's a moment when I'm sitting in front of, which I describe in the book. There's a more funny story about it, but it's a come to Jesus moment where this financial aid officer asked me, "How are you going to pay for this?" And I'm like, never thought about that.
Hopes and dreams.
Never, yeah. Maybe I'll go, or I'll join the military and then I'll pay it back. That was my answer. Yeah. Was a scholarship and military. So, but I never thought about it until that point. And I'm like, yeah, my parents are gone. And my grandfather died a week before my dad did. So, yeah, crazy.
Wow.
So I love to learn, such a hunger for knowledge, and I love helping people, and the gift of being able to do that as a surgeon. I can't personally. I hate needles personally. I hate having my blood drawn. Yeah, I know. Really? But I can stick anybody.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
And there was never any queasy moment, or I just knew. So,
during your time going through the things that you went through as a child, all the way through med school, okay, what was if you had to choose, I don't know, if you had to choose one thing that kept you going, what was it?
I think it's stubbornness. I think it's
I like that.
You're not going to tell me I'm not going to get this done.
Right.
Freshman year, my guys on the floor saying, "You're not going to finish." No, I'm going to finish. I'm going to show you I'm going to finish.
So was it a sense of just sophomore? Was it a sense of just proving them wrong, and saying that, yeah, you know what? Tell me I can't do it, and I'm going to show you I can.
Yeah. I'm gonna bend over, grab some soil, let it run through my hand, pick up my sword, and battle.
I love it. That's a great answer. I love that. Never give up. I want to transition a little bit now. We've talked a little bit about the book, and I think this is the book's called Saved. And
right.
Folks, if you're listening to the show, you're already online. I will have the where you can get the book and whatnot in the show notes below. The book's called Saved. Let's talk about this. And you touched on it a little bit, but let's go over it again, and let's talk about what prompted you to write this book. And you said you wrote this, and your grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you said your grandmother had a big part of you writing this book, correct?
Yeah. I would take her to Sacramento Kings games, like 6 to 8 a year, and we'd go to dinner beforehand, and then go to the game, and then I'd bring her home. And she's just like, you need to do this book. So it's kind of a miracle how it even started. So I was at a Grant Cardone 10X macho, leadership business, not Christian. And these people are telling me you need to get on the stage. And I'm like, you don't even know me, right? And so we were at a restaurant that was a blues restaurant, and this single guitarist is up there. He walks over and chit chats and invites us to join them tomorrow night at this bar. And at that bar is one of his friends who's writing a book, who then says, yeah, you need to call my editor. And she gets you hooked up with a iPhone app called Rev that you just dictate into.
Right.
And then you can have it printed and given back to you, and you can load that in Word and then write it better, because the way I speak is horrible. So a lot of editing. And then you're reminded of different parts. Oh, I needed to include that, but I didn't say it. So, and then send that off to my editor, who was like a coach, and she'd put it on a document that, there'd be questions in the like a chat for
Right.
Zoom. And something that wasn't clear, especially if it was a procedure that I was describing, and make it better. So, but it was still my voice. And then then the biggest challenge was I just got done with the Audible. So turns out 8 years ago, we learned that our youngest son, who's now 15, has dyslexia. And I'm reading all the symptoms, and I go, that's me. So I've always known I was a slow reader. And like from third grade, this story's in the book, of where I'm like in a dark classroom feeling with my underwear around my ankles as I'm trying to read the prompter, as Star Wars, long far ago.
Yeah.
And I can't keep up, and they're slowing it down. So the next week I'm in a different third grade class. So, yeah, but in every test I've ever taken, I count the time and the number of questions and know how many seconds per question. And I worry more about that than I do the questions. Right. It's totally distracting, but I've gotten through, obviously. So then I choose to use the Audible, and I did a Facebook survey of, should I? Yes, everybody, 100%. Should I do it? Because people like my voice. And I was 99.9%. One high school friend of mine, nope, Coyote should do it. So anyway, so I did do it, but it's like, if you have polio and a really shrunken leg and you get around just fine, you never think you have a disability or a distraction until someone tells you need to run.
Right.
And so here I am with, a slow reading problem, trying to read, and I'm swearing at whoever wrote this book, which was me, because why did you make such a long sentence? You get about a third of the way, and then it's choppy, and then you get 2/3 of the way, and then finally you get through the whole thing, and it sounds okay. Yeah, it was rough.
I can. This is the part that I told you before we hit the record button that we kind of have a lot of similarities. That happened to me growing up as a kid. I'm 45. And I still can't read. I prefer audiobooks just because I can understand them. Right. I can't sit down and read because I can't comprehend what I'm reading. I have to read it 5-6 times before something actually clicks. Yeah. Once you started the book, how long did it take you to finish it?
Over 1.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I would get busy, or distracted, not make it a priority. And then part of it, I think, is, I don't know if you've ever read David Goggins' book, but he does an interesting Audible where he has like his narrator, editor ask him questions. But I really felt his pain, because he talks about wetting his bed and childhood trauma, and going back through these experiences is very emotional.
Yeah. I want to change it up on you right now. I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, Doc.
Don't know whether I should duck or swing.
Well, my arm's not what it used to be, so you should be all right. You mentioned that you grew up Catholic, and I think it's safe to say that we are believers. Do you remember a specific time in your life where you either praying or talking to God or whatnot, and you're just asking a question, and you felt His presence, like overwhelmingly presence, where it paralyzed you?
Um, yeah, I think I said it in the book that it was like my dad's voice, but really, you get these, you pull out of your driveway and you head down the road and suddenly something tells you, oh, I forgot what I was supposed to bring, right? So I think that's God's voice just kind of helping you out. So I had packed up my parents' home and was pulling in a big Ryder truck that I shouldn't have been able to rent because I wasn't of age. It's 21. You have to be 24, I think.
Right.
They gave it to me, and it's in a court, so it's protected. It's Providence Court, like I said, and then I need to turn it around, and I'd helped my dad a million times with our long trailer and the Lincoln Continental that had the suicide doors. Which he thought was a sports car.
Big old boats.
Yeah, big old boat, man. There's playing the steering wheel. I think I got to drive it once.
Oh, big one. Like, just to turn
You start the engine and yell, clear prop.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I mean, I just there's cars parked around. I don't know how to physically get the truck around. And this voice in my head says, look, and I'm like, Dad, where are you? And this voice says, he's with you always because he taught you. His personality you've extracted from and taken into your own soul. And he's there with you. So just do what he would do. And I cried.
Yeah. That's got goosebumps on my arms, folks, on that one. Doc, you're on a show called The Decision Hour, and we have to make decisions every day. Name a time in your life where your feet were on the line and you have to make that decision. What is it, and what is the atmosphere like for you at that time?
Man, it's funny because things that pop in my head are actually decisions for other people's lives, but then it's for me, right? So the one that comes to my mind is I was in Hawaii for a friend's wedding, and a group of us, probably 8 of us, were body surfing, probably 4 to 6 foot waves or so. And there was a pretty good riptide. And there was a kid, probably about 14, 15, that was out there with us. And, if you've ever surfed or body surfed or just floated, it wants to pull you one direction. Before you know it, you're a quarter mile away from where all your towels and stuff are. And anyway, I just heard this weird noise, and I looked over, and this kid is being sucked into this coral reef. And this panic, I'll never forget the look on his face. And I grew up swimming and playing water polo. So I'm comfortable in water, but I also know nature in a second I've been kayaking where just the current has taken a aluminum kayak into a tree and just bent it around it. And I've been surfing where I've been bent in two backwards. And luckily I was young enough, it didn't hurt me. But so I knew it was that moment of, this is real. I could die, but I got to go get this kid. And so I pulled a classic water polo maneuver. As soon as I got close enough, I reached out my hand. He grabbed it, and I just, like I was playing water polo, pulled that guy as hard as I could towards the beach and into shallow, which then pulls me that way. But then I could egg beater and kick and get away, and I did. So we both were fine. But there was that moment of, this is real. It could go bad in seconds, but I got to do it.
How old were you then?
Probably in my early 40s.
Wow. That's crazy. Doc, where can people, those that are listening, where can they find you? Are you on the social medias?
I'm on all those, but I think the quickest reference that has all that stuff in it is just my webpage, which is craigthayer.net.
Okay. Craigthayer.net.
It has a link to the book. It will have a link to you at some point. So, yeah, and just what's going on in my life. So sometimes I put, stupid reels up on Instagram and Facebook, especially about making the book, because it was it was a good event. But yeah.
Well, we'll make sure that we tag you. We'll have all this info, all of your social media and the website in the show notes below, folks. So if you're listening, click on those and it'll take you right to his social media pages as well as his website. Doc, before we let you go, any closing words?
Man, I just, one of my callings now, I think, is to help undivide the world. And we all bleed the same. We're all human, male, female, whatever. We're all human. Doesn't matter what, So just, take time and try and find coincidences, luck, rare events, and see if those aren't miracles in your life.
Love that.
That gives you a chance to know that God's still there with you.
Oh, that is great. Doc, thank you very much for spending the day with us.
Hey, no, thank you, Adam. Privileged.
Folks, again, make sure you check it out. Dr. Craig Thayer. We're going to have his information in the show notes below. But before we let you go, make sure you go check out our parent network, Heroes Media Group. Check out all the shows, new content that's going up over there. If you're a podcaster or an author, you have a podcast, you're looking for a new directory, give us a shout. If you're an author and you want an audio book, reach out. You can email info@heroesmediagroup.com. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.